and the walls kept tumbling down in the city that we love. Great clouds roll over the hills, bringing darkness from us.
In 1835, American settlers established a sugar plantation system in Hawaii. This required a lot of workers. The plantation owners started to import many Chinese laborers in 1852. By 1865, many Chinese left the plantations to work somewhere else. On May 17, 1868, the first boat with Japanese workers arrived in Hawaii. This first group of Japanese left their unstable country hoping that they could find peace, prosperity, and a better life for their children in America. Working on the plantations was tough for the Japanese workers. Besides the hard work, the living conditions of the Japanese were primitive, and they had to cope with many bosses who were physically brutal. Therefore, it's no surprise that half of the workers returned to Japan when their contract ended. In 1924, the Federal Immigration Act prohibited all immigration from Japan. Although the immigration stopped, Hawaii's population remained overwhelmingly Japanese. In the following decades, many immigrants moved beyond plantation life, becoming prominent in politics, education, and business. On the morning of December 7, 1941, the Japanese Imperial Navy attacked Pearl Harbor by surprise. The reason to attack Pearl Harbor was to demolish the biggest part of the American Navy, because this would give the Japanese the power over the Pacific. 2,402 American soldiers died and 1,282 were injured. On the other side, only 65 Japanese soldiers died or got injured, and one was captured by the Americans. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, America declared war to Japan. The one soldier who was captured sought and received assistance of 3 locals of Japanese descent in overcoming his captors, finding weapons, and taking several hostages. He was killed in the end. These actions contributed to a sense in the American military that every Japanese, even those who were American citizens, might aid Japan, and ultimately may have influenced the decision to intern Japanese Americans during World War II. Japanese American internment was the World War II internment in war relocation camps of about 110,000 people of Japanese heritage who lived on the Pacific coast of the United States. President Franklin D. Roosevelt authorized the internment with Executive Order 9066, issued on February 19, 1942, which allowed local military commanders to designate military areas as exclusion zones, from which any or all persons may be excluded. This power was used to declare that all people of Japanese ancestry were excluded from the entire Pacific coast. George Takei is a famous actor from America. You may know him from Star Trek. He is going to tell you his story about the Japanese internment camps in America after the attack on Pearl Harbor.
I remember, that unforgettable day, that terrible day when American soldiers came to the front door of our house to order us out. He carried a bayoneted rifle, and I was 4 years old at the time, but, your parents' tension, my mother was crying, we'd been packing, all that transfers. You really don't understand what's going on, but I will never forget that.
You're living here in LA?
Yeah, I was born and raised here in LA. And simply because we happen to look like the people who bombed Pearl Harbor. There were no charges, there were no trials, no due process. We were summarily rounded up and put into these barbed wire, sentry tower, machine guns pointed. When I made the night runs to the latrine, searchlights followed me. It was a concentration camp, pure and simple. The euphemism was relocation center. You know, it sounds very innocuous. Innocuous. Machine guns pointed at us. Armed soldiers. Barbed wire. And I went to school, you know, behind those barbed wire fences, and we began every morning with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I mean, I could see the barbed wire fence and the sentry towers and the machine gun right outside my schoolhouse window as I recited the words, "With liberty and justice for all." When we came back, I started school again, and I had a teacher that continued to refer to me as that little Jap boy. I mean, that stung. It was a dark chapter in American history.